Hello, everybody. I I always post a thing before I go live, and it obviously takes me a little bit to get onto live from after writing that, or in the time that's written and posted to other places. It takes me a little time to get set up here then. But hey, how is everybody? I am just gonna adjust Nageki in the background because I feel like he looks a little off kilter. So I should probably take out my headphones first. There he is. Okay. Now he's out of shot, isn't he? Let's put him there. Yeah, that's great. Doing okay. It's been a lot of the same, really. I was gonna say. Oh, you may notice that there is a giant freaking donate button now. Do not be frightened of the donate button. Do not be bullied by the donate button. That is going to be adjusted so it is smaller. And we'll have other things set up as well, but it's just when that was being worked on, it was pretty late. So, we weren't able to do everything that we wanted to do from yesterday into today. Things will probably be set up by the time that we do stuff next week. Oh, I have to record. I did record. See, this is what happened because I realized that I don't have one of the I don't have a portion of one of the Hotful Boyfriend episodes. I think I went over this like yesterday or something. And then because of that, now I'm all like, it was because it was a day where I didn't feel well. I started things up and was kind of out of it. So a portion of that, and I didn't even go back to, think to go back to save it after the fact from Twitch. It's very silly of me, but, it is what it is. However, I'm being, hyper diligent of it now. Hyper vigilant, rather, of it now, and, yeah, so hopefully that won't happen again, but, here we are, and we also have some new alerts for follows and for donations. The follows are not completely updated yet, but I do have a cute little graphic that will pop up, and yeah, that we're, going on the road trying to get to 50 followers. Right now we're halfway there. We've got 25. If you want to do that, you definitely don't have to. Oh, it didn't save it. Hold on. You might have to do it again. I saw it pop up. That's not what I had selected for that. I'm sorry to make you do this. I mean, I guess you decided to do it, but still, yeah, why didn't it save? That's not what I have as my follow. Really weird. I don't understand why that doesn't work. Because I have it here. I have the thing that I set for following. And I had the thing I set for following, and for some reason it still did the default dinosaur animation, didn't it? It did that, right? It did the dinosaur? Yeah, I don't understand. Like, so I don't know that I have my... Here, I'll show you, because I have my display capture here, too. Yeah, see, look, this is what I have set to display. So it's very weird that it didn't... that didn't work. I don't know. I don't know, it should have worked. Dance? What dance? Dinosaur? Dinosaur dance? There was a notification that had a dinosaur on it. Yeah, it did the dinosaur animation. Like there's a dinosaur. I mean, even if it doesn't work, it's fine. We'll figure it out in the future. But yeah, there's definitely a delay. It doesn't... I haven't gotten any, obviously, pop-up notification here this time. I think it's just like, well, you get what you get, and you don't get upset. Yeah, stop doing that. Alright, well... That's fine. That's fine. We'll figure it out. No, I understand what you're saying, but it's not. It was an actual dinosaur in the notification is what we were talking about, like an image of a dinosaur is what we're saying. So, like, I have an image that I selected for it, and it's not the image of the dinosaur, but that was the default image. It has since been changed, so when it said it, I said it did the dinosaur, I meant because it did the animation that was the default, and not what I had changed it to or saved it to. Okay. I couldn't tell. Anyway, that's fine. Let us go ahead and... No, I get it. I get it now. I didn't understand then. It's hard with text for that stuff to come through sometimes. But we have, our book, if everybody's ready for... stop. Why? I didn't... Okay. Anyway. If everybody's ready, we can go ahead and start the book. Hold on, I'm just, getting a place to tentatively stop. Okay. Okay, just ballbarred. She woke in a small bed in a little cabin on a boat. She knew it was a boat because it was rocking, and indeed the rocking, gentle as it was, had woken her up. The cabin was spare and basic. She was wearing a thick fleece sweater and long johns. Pulling back the blanket, she noticed that she had a headache. Her mouth was so dry her cheeks felt sucked in against her teeth. She coughed a deep, chesty cough and felt a million pool lengths away from the body of an Olympian. Her fingers smelt of tobacco. She sat up to see a pale, blonde, robust, hard-weathered woman sitting on another bed, staring at her. "Good morning, Nora." I can't do "Good morning." I can't do whatever accent this is. Although I appreciate that it is written in, written this way. I don't think it was good, but that's fine. Thank you. She smiled, and hoped that in this life she wasn't fluent in whichever Scandinavian language this woman spoke. "Good morning." She noticed a half-empty bottle of vodka and a mug on the floor beside the woman's bed. A dog calendar, April, Springer Spaniel, was propped up on the chest between the beds. The 3 books on top of it were all in English. The one nearest to the woman said Principles of Glacier Mechanics. 2 on Nora's, a Naturalist's Guide to the Arctic, and a Penguin Classic edition of The Saga of the Volsungs, the Norse... That probably mispronounced that, but whatever. I will check the pronunciation later. The Norse epic of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. She noticed something else. It was cold. Properly cold. The cold that almost burns, that hurts your fingers and toes and stiffens your cheeks. Even inside, with layers of thermal underwear, with a sweater on, with the bars of 2 electric heaters glowing orange. Every exhale made a cloud. "Why are you here, Nora?" the woman asked in heavily accented English. A tricky question, when you didn't know where here was. "A bit early in the morning, isn't it, for philosophy?" Nora laughed nervously. She saw a wall of ice outside the portal, rising out of the sea. She was either very far north or very far south. She was very far somewhere. The woman was still staring at her. Nora had no idea if they were friends or not. The woman seemed tough, direct, earthy, but probably an interesting form of company. "I don't mean philosophy. I don't even mean what got you into glaciological research. Although it might be the same thing. I mean, why did you choose to go as far away from civilization as possible? You've never told me." "I don't know," she said. "I like the cold. No one likes this cold. Unless they are sadomasochist." She had a point. Nora reached for the sweater at the end of the bed and put it on, over the sweater she was already wearing. As she did, she saw, beside the vodka bottle, a laminated lanyard lying on the floor. Ingrid Skierbeck, Professor of Geoscience, International Polar Research Institute. "I don't know, Ingrid. I just like glaciers, I suppose. I want to understand them. Why are they melting?" She wasn't sounding like a glacier expert, judging from Ingrid's raised eyebrows. "What about you?" she asked hopefully. Ingrid sighed, rubbed her palm with a finger. "After Per died, I couldn't stand to be in Oslo anymore. All those people that weren't him, you know. There was this coffee shop we used to go to at the university. We'd just sit together but silent. Happy silent. Reading newspapers, drinking coffee. It was hard to avoid places like that. We used to walk around everywhere. His troublesome soul lingered on every street. I kept telling his memory to piss the fuck off, but it wouldn't. Grief is a bastard. If I'd stayed any longer, I'd have hated humanity. So when a research position came up in Svalbard, I was like, yes, this has come to save me. I wanted to be somewhere he had never been. I wanted somewhere where I didn't have to feel his ghost. But the truth is, it only half works, you know. Places are places, and memories are memories, and life is fucking life." Nora took all this in. Ingrid was clearly telling this to someone she thought she knew reasonably well, and yet Nora was a stranger. It felt odd. Wrong. This must be the hardest bit about being a spy, she thought. The emotion people store in you like a bad investment. You feel like you are robbing people of something. Ingrid smiled, breaking the thought. "Anyway, thanks for last night. That was a good chat. There are a lot of dickheads on this boat, and you are not a dickhead." "Oh, thanks. Neither are you." And it was then that Nora noticed the gun, a large rifle with a hefty brown handle, leaning against the wall at the far end of the room, under the coat hooks. The sight made her feel happy somehow, made her feel like her 11-year-old self would have been proud. She was, it seemed, having an adventure. The next title is like kind of it's Hugo Lefebvre. I think Hugo Lefebvre. It's LefE with an accent, VRE. So I think that might be as close as we're going to get. Yeah, I think that's as close as we're going to get. Nora walked with her headache and her obvious hangover through an undecorated wooden passageway to a small dining room that smelled of pickled herring, and where a few research scientists were having breakfast. She got herself a black coffee and some stale, dry rye bread and sat down. Around her, outside the window, was the most eerily beautiful sight she had ever seen. Islands of ice, like rocks rendered clean and pure white, were visible amid the fog. There were 17 other people in the dining hall, Nora counted. 11 men, 6 women. Nora sat by herself, but within 5 minutes a man with short hair and stubble 2 days away from a full beard sat down at her table. He was wearing a parka, like most of the room, but he seemed ill-suited to it, as if he would be more at home on the Riviera wearing designer shorts and a pink polo shirt. He smiled at Nora. She tried to translate the smile to understand the kind of relationship they had. He watched her for a little while, then shuffled his chair along to sit opposite her. She looked for a lanyard, but he wasn't wearing one. She wondered if she should have known his name. "I'm Hugo," he said to her relief. "Hugo Lefebvre. Lefebvre? Hugo Lefebvre?" This is going to be a back and forth with this one, I can tell. Hugo Lefebvre. "You are Nora, yes?" "Yes. I saw you around in Svalbard at the research center, but we never said hello. Anyway, I just wanted to say I read your paper on pulsating glaciers and it blew my mind." "Really?" "Yes. I mean, it's always fascinated me. Why do they do that, and why do they do that here and nowhere else? It's such a strange phenomenon." Life is full of strange phenomena. Conversation was tempting, but dangerous. Nora smiled a small, polite smile and then looked out the window. The islands of ice turned into actual islands, little snow-streaked pointed hills, like the tips of mountains, or flatter, craggy plates of land. And beyond them, the glacier Nora had seen from the cabin portal. She could get a better measure of it now, although its top portion was concealed under a visor of cloud. Other parts of it were entirely free from fog. It was incredible. You see a picture of a glacier on TV or in a magazine and you see a smooth lump of white, but this was as textured as a mountain, black, brown, and white. And there were infinite varieties of that white, a whole visual smorgasbord of variation. White, blue white, turquoise white, gold white, silver white, translucent white, rendered glaringly alive and impressive. Certainly more impressive than the breakfast. "Depressing, isn't it?" Hugo said. "What?" "The fact that the day never ends." Nora felt uneasy with this observation. In what sense? He waited a second before responding. "The never-ending light," he said, before taking a bite of dry cracker. "From April on, it's like living one interminable day." I hate that feeling. Tell me about it. "You'd think they'd give the portals curtains. Hardly slept since I've been on this boat." Nora nodded. "How long is that again?" He laughed. It was a nice laugh. Closed-mouthed. Civilized. Hardly a laugh at all. "I drank a lot with Ingrid last night. Vodka has stolen my memory." "Are you sure it's the vodka?" "What else would it be?" His eyes were inquisitive and made Nora feel automatically guilty. She looked over at Ingrid, who was drinking her coffee and typing on her laptop. She wished she had sat down with her now. "Well, that was our 3rd night," Hugo said. "We have been meandering around the archipelago since Sunday." "Yeah, Sunday. That's when we left Longyearbyen." Longyearbyen. This book should just, I'm having a lot of fun with it, but, like, this is, like, a marathon of things that are potentially difficult to pronounce. Nora made a face as if to say she knew all this. Sunday seems forever away. The boat felt like it was turning. Nora was forced to lean a little in her seat. 20 years ago, there was hardly any open water in Svalbard in April. Look at it now. It's like cruising the Mediterranean. Nora tried to make her smile seem relaxed. Not quite. Anyway, I heard you got the short straw today? Nora tried to look blank, which wasn't hard. Really? You're the spotter, aren't you? She had no idea what he was talking about, but feared the twinkle in his eye. Yes, she answered. Yes, I am. I am the spotter. Hugo's eyes widened with shock, or mock shock. It was hard to tell the difference with him. The spotter? Yes? Nora desperately wanted to know what the spotter actually did, but couldn't ask. Oh, bon chance, said Hugo with a testing gaze. Merci, said Nora, staring out at the crisp Arctic light and a landscape she had only ever seen in magazines. I'm ready for a challenge. Yeah. It's all stuff that has to be looked up, I think, retrospect, like, in after the fact. I'll just say that. I don't want to say hindsight. Hindsight doesn't work. Retrospectively is sort of, like, not also quite right. So, looking back, that's the best. Now we are moving on to a chapter or section called Walking in Circles. An hour later, and Nora was on an expanse of snow-covered rock. More of a skerry than an island. A place so small and uninhabitable it had no name, though a larger island, ominously titled Bear Island, was visible across the ice-cold water. She stood next to a boat, not the Lance, the large boat she'd had breakfast on, that was moored safely out at sea, but the small motor dinghy that had been dragged up out of the water almost single-handedly by a big boulder of a man called Rune, who, despite his Scandinavian name, spoke in languid West Coast American. At her feet was a fluorescent yellow rucksack, and lying on the ground was the Winchester rifle that had been leaning against the wall in the cabin. This was her gun. In this life she owned a firearm. Next to the gun was a saucepan with a ladle inside it. In her hands was another, less deadly gun, a signal pistol, ready to fire a flare. She had discovered what kind of spotting she was doing. While 9 of the scientists conducted a climate tracking field work on this tiny island, she was a lookout for polar bears. Apparently this was a very real prospect, and if she saw one, the very first thing she had to do was fire the flare. This would serve the dual purpose of A, frightening the bear away, and B, warning the others. It was not foolproof. Humans were tasty protein sources, and the bears were not known for their fear, especially in recent years, as the loss of habitat and food sources had made them ever more vulnerable and forced them to be more reckless. Soon as you fired the flare, said the eldest of the group, a beardless, sharp-featured man called Peter, who was the field leader and who spoke in a state of permanent fortissimo. Bang the pan with a ladle. Bang it like mad and scream. They have sensitive hearing. They're like cats. 9 times out of 10, the noises scare them off. And the other time out of 10, he nodded down at his rifle. At the rifle, you kill it. Before it kills you. Nora wasn't the only one with a gun. They all had guns. They were armed scientists. Anyway, Peter laughed and Ingrid patted her back. I truly hope, said Ingrid, laughing raspily, you don't get eaten. I would miss you. So long as you aren't menstruating, you should be okay. Jesus. What? They can smell the blood from a mile away. Another person, someone who was so thoroughly wrapped up it was impossible to tell who they even were if she had known them, wished her good luck in a muffled, faraway voice. We'll be back in 5 hours, Peter told her. He laughed again, and Nora hoped that meant it was a joke. Walk in circles to keep warm. And then they left her, walking off over the rocky ground and disappearing into the fog. For an hour, nothing happened. Nora walked in circles. She hopped from left foot to right foot. The fog thinned a little, and she stared out at the landscape. She wondered why she was not back in the library. After all, this was definitely a bit shit. There were surely lives where she was sitting beside a swimming pool in the sunshine right now, lives where she was playing music or lying in a warm lavender-scented bath or having incredible third-date sex or reading on a beach in Mexico or eating at a Michelin-starred restaurant or strolling the streets of Paris or getting lost in Rome or tranquilly gazing at a temple near Kyoto or feeling the warm cocoon of a happy relationship. In most lives, she would have at least been physically comfortable, and yet she was feeling something new here, or something old that she had long buried. The glacial landscape reminded her that she was, first and foremost, a human living on a planet. Almost everything she had done in her life, she realized, almost everything she had bought and worked for and consumed, had taken her further away from understanding that she and all humans were really just one of 9 million species. If one advances confidently, Thoreau had written in Walden, in the direction of his dreams, and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He'd also observed that part of the success was the product of being alone. I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude. And Nora felt similarly in that moment. Although she had only been left alone for an hour at this point, she had never experienced this level of solitude before, amid such unpopulated nature. She had thought, in her nocturnal and suicidal hours, that solitude was the problem, but that was because it hadn't been true solitude. The lonely mind in a busy city yearns for connection because it thinks human-to-human connection is the point of everything. But amid pure nature, or the tonic of wildness, as Thoreau called it, solitude took on a different character. It became, in itself, a kind of connection, a connection between herself and the world, and between her and herself. I wanted to comment on that. We're not done with the section, but it's interesting because I've noticed that sometimes when I'm alone, I don't feel... So, sometimes I do feel lonely, but sometimes I don't, and I feel fine with being alone, and sometimes it's the thought that, wait, I shouldn't feel fine with being alone. I should be with people. I should be doing this and that. All these other people with people, and all this. And that thought makes you sad, because it's like, what's wrong with me? Or I shouldn't be happy with this, even though if you're happy, you're happy. But it's interesting because it just goes to show that sometimes there are, conceptions about these things that have been colored by society or have been colored by, just what we're taught is the normal or should be the normal or the desired that influence us. We stop listening to ourselves and just listen to what we're told we should want. So it's interesting to hear about that. She remembered a conversation she'd had with Ash, tall and slightly awkward and cute and forever in need of a new songbook for his guitar. The chat hadn't been in the shop, but in the hospital when her mother was ill. Shortly after discovering she had ovarian cancer, she had needed surgery. Nora had taken her mum to see all the consultants at Bedford General Hospital, and she had held her mum's hand more in those few weeks than in all the rest of their relationship put together. While her mum was undergoing surgery, Nora had waited in the hospital canteen, and Ash, in his scrubs and recognizing her as the person he chatted to on many occasions in string theory, saw she looked worried and popped in to say hi. He worked at the hospital as a general surgeon, and she'd ended up asking him lots of questions about the sort of stuff he did. On that particular day, he'd removed an appendix and a bile duct. She also asked about normal post-surgery recovery time and procedure for a very long time about all sorts of... She also asked about normal post-surgery recovery time and procedure times, and he had been very reassuring. They'd ended up talking for a very long time about all sorts of things, which he seemed to sense she'd been in need of. He'd said something about not over-Googling health symptoms, and that had led to them talking about social media. He believed that the more people were connected on social media, the lonelier society became. And I can totally get that too. It goes back to the whole expectation thing, or seeing what other people have and going, oh, well, that's what I need to be happy, and That's, what's true for one is not true for the other. And also, one of the things that when I was having therapy, one of the things that we discussed very early on was this idea of how there is no real normal track record for things. Even if there's something you want to do, just because someone else has gotten it in this time doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you getting it in a different time. But yeah, definitely FOMO. But definitely seeing people talking about things like, we kind of lump it all together. I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and not remembering that, one, not everybody is doing all of these things all at once. This one got a raise, this one got a new job, this one got married, this one has a kid. But no one is doing all of these things at one time. And also, we're only seeing the things that people want us to see. So there's a lot of stuff going on in those people's lives that, we'd never know about. But yeah, it was interesting because I also watched a podcast, not to delay us too far or diverge too far from topic, but I watched a podcast that Christy Carlson Romano, who's the voice actress of Kim Possible, if you guys remember, and Will Friedle, who's the voice actor of Ron Stoppable from Kim Possible, were talking about. And Will is, not on any social media whatsoever. And part of it was because he realized that it was, it would make you depressed, and it had made him depressed and heightened his anxiety and things like that. And also that it created unkind competition between people that, just did not need to be there. Wanting, more followers or anything like that. All of this stuff is kind of... So what's really interesting is, I feel like there's a site, Tumblr, which I don't know if many people are on it or know about it anymore, but on Tumblr you can kind of choose to display how many followers you have, and things like that, or how many people you follow too. And I like that much better than, Twitter and Instagram, where it's, right in your face, this person follows this many people, they're followed by this many people, and it's just that stuff is displayed, and it's displayed at the top of your page on purpose. And it is to create this kind of hierarchy, this kind of competition, to make you more passionate about the platform, because the business profits from that. But it is really kind of bad for people in a lot of cases. A lot of people can't take that kind of... And it's not okay to be constantly and casually subjected to that kind of competition all the time. Interesting conversations. I totally recommend that podcast. I think it's not I Hear Voice. I think it's Vulnerable. Yeah. It was Vulnerable with Will Friedle. I totally recommend checking that out, because there was some really interesting insight that I got from that. Okay. That's why everyone hates each other nowadays, he reckoned, because they are overloaded with non-friend friends. Ever heard about Dunbar's number? And then he had told her about a man named Roger Dunbar at Oxford University, who had discovered that human beings were wired to know only 150 people, as that was the average size of hunter-gatherer communities. And the Doomsday Book, Ash had told her, under the stark lighting of the hospital canteen, if you look at the Doomsday Book, the average size of an English community at that time was 150 people, except in Kent, where it was 100 people. I'm from Kent. We have antisocial DNA. I've been to Kent, Nora had countered. I noticed that, but I like that theory. I can meet that many people on Instagram in an hour. Exactly. Not healthy. Our brains can't handle it. Which is why we crave face-to-face communication more than ever, and which is why I would never buy my Simon and Garfunkel guitar chord songbooks online. She smiled at the memory, then was brought back to the reality of the Arctic landscape by the sound of a loud splash. A few meters away from her, between the rocky skerry she was standing on and Bear Island, there was another little rock, or collection of rocks, sticking out from the water. Something was emerging from the sea froth, something heavy, slapping against the stone with a great wet weight. Her whole body shaking, she got ready to fire the flare, but it wasn't a polar bear. It was a walrus. The fat, brown, wrinkled beast shuffled over the ice, then stopped to stare at her. She, or he, looked old, even for a walrus. The walrus knew no shame and could hold a stare for an indefinite amount of time. Nora felt scared. She only knew two things about walruses: that they could be vicious, and that they were never alone for very long. There were probably other walruses about to haul out of the water. She wondered if she should fire the flare. The walrus stayed where it was, like a ghost of itself in the grainy light, but slowly disappeared behind a veil of fog. Minutes went by. Nora had 7 layers of clothing on, but her eyelids felt like they were stiffening and could freeze shut if she closed them for too long. She heard the voices of the others occasionally drift over to her, and for a while her colleagues returned close enough for her to see some of them. Silhouettes in the fog, hunched over the ground, reading ice samples with equipment that she wouldn't have understood. But then they disappeared again. She ate one of those protein bars in her rucksack. It was cold and hard as toffee. She checked her phone, but there was no signal. It was very quiet. The quiet made her realize how much noise there was elsewhere in the world. Here, noise had meaning. You heard something and you had to pay attention. As she was chewing, there came another splashing sound, but this time from a different direction. The combination of fog and weak light made it hard to see. But it wasn't a walrus. That became clear when she realized the silhouette moving toward her was big. Bigger than a walrus and much bigger than any human. A moment of extreme crisis in the middle of nowhere. "Oh, fuck," whispered Nora into the cold. That's the only thing on this page. The frustration of not finding a library when you really need one. The fog cleared to reveal a huge white bear standing upright. Now fire the flare. It dropped... That was just me. That wasn't in the book about firing the flare. It dropped down to all fours and continued moving toward her with surprising velocity and a heavy and terrifying grace. Nora did nothing. Her mind was jammed with panic. She was as still as the permafrost she stood on. Fuck! Fuck, fuck! Fuck, fuck, fucking fuck! Fuck, 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 fuck! Eventually, a survival impulse kicked in, and Nora raised the signal pistol and fired it, and the flare shot out like a tiny little comet and disappeared into the water, the glow fading along with her hope. The creature was still coming towards her. She fell to her knees and started clanging the ladle against the saucepan and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Bear! Bear! Bear!" The bear stopped momentarily. "Bear! Bear! Bear!" It was now walking forward again. The banging wasn't working. The bear was close. She wondered if she could reach the rifle lying on the ice just slightly too far away. She could see the bear's vast pawed feet, armed with claws, pressing into the snow-dusted rock. Its head was low, and its black eyes were looking directly at her. "Library!" Nora screamed. "Mrs. Elm! Please send me back! This is the wrong life! It is really, really, really wrong! Take me back! I don't want adventure! Where is the library? I want the library!" There was no hatred in the polar bear's stare. Nora was just food. Meat. And that was a humbling kind of terror. Her heart pounded like a drummer reaching the crescendo, the end of the song, and it became astoundingly clear to her finally, in that moment, she didn't want to die. And that was the problem. In the face of death, life seemed more attractive, and as life seemed more attractive, how could she get back to the Midnight Library? She had to be disappointed in a life, not just scared of it, in order to try again with another book. There was death. Violent, oblivious death in bear form staring at her with its black eyes, and she knew then, more than she'd known anything, that she wasn't ready to die. This knowledge grew bigger than fear itself as she stood there, face to face with a polar bear, itself hungry and desperate to exist, and banged the ladle against the saucepan. Harder. A fast staccato bang, bang, bang. I'm not scared. 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 The bear stood and stared, the way the walrus had. She glanced at the rifle. Yes, it was too far away. By the time she could grab it and work out how to fire it, it would probably already be too late. She doubted she'd be able to kill a polar bear anyway, so she banged the ladle. Nora closed her eyes, wishing for the library as she carried on making noise. When she opened them, the bear was slipping headfirst into the water. She kept banging the saucepan even after the creature had disappeared. About a minute later, she heard the humans calling her name through the fog. The next section here is called Island. She was in shock, but it was a slightly different kind of shock than the others on the dinghy and the dinghy assumed. It wasn't the shock of having been close to death. It was the shock of realizing she actually wanted to live. They passed a small island teeming with nature, green lichens spread over rocks, birds, little auks and puffins clustered together, huddled against the Arctic wind, life surviving against the odds. Nora sipped the coffee that Hugo handed her, fresh from his flask, holding it with cold hands, even under 3 pairs of gloves. To be part of nature was to be part of the will to live. When you stay too long in a place, you forget just how big an expanse the world is. You get no sense of the length of those longitudes and latitudes. Just as, she supposed, it is hard to have a sense of the vastness inside any one person. But once you sense that vastness, once something reveals it, hope emerges, whether you want it to or not, and it clings to you as stubbornly as lichen clings to a rock. Yeah, it's interesting. The next section is called Permafrost. Let me just take a sip of water before I go on to that. Hold on. I hope everybody else has their water too. I guess iced coffee can suffice. There is water in iced coffee. However, it is not as good as water. So it counts, but barely. Okay, permafrost. The surface air temperatures in Svalbard were warming at twice the global rate. Climate change was happening faster here than almost anywhere on Earth. One woman, wearing a purple woolen hat pulled down over her eyebrows, talked about witnessing one of the icebergs doing a somersault, something that happened apparently because the warming waters had dissolved it from beneath, causing it to become top-heavy. Another problem was that the permafrost on the land was thawing, softening the ground, leading to landslides and avalanches that could destroy the wooden houses of Nongbudjen, the largest town in Svalbard. There was also a risk of bodies surfacing in the local cemetery. It was inspiring, being among these scientists who were trying to discover precisely what was happening to the planet, trying to observe glacial and climatic activity, and in so doing, to inform and to protect life on Earth. Back on the main boat, Nora sat quietly in the dining area as everyone offered sympathy for the bear encounter. She felt unable to tell them that she was grateful for the experience. She just smiled politely and did her best to avoid conversation. This life was an intense one, without compromise. It was currently minus 17 degrees, and she had nearly been eaten by a polar bear, and yet maybe the problem was her root life had partly been in its blandness. She had come to imagine mediocrity and disappointment were her destiny. Indeed, Nora had always had the sense that she came from a long line of regrets and crushed hopes that seemed to echo in every generation. For instance, her grandfather on her mother's side was called Lorenzo Conte. He had left Puglia. Puglia? Is that how that would be pronounced? Puglia? Puglia? Probably Puglia. As Elaine Bredehoff said in court while trying to defend an undefendable client, "I'm trying, Your Honor." Puglia. Oh, Puglia. You don't pronounce the... Oh, okay, so it must be like a... an Italian word where they don't pronounce the G. Or an Italian place, rather. That makes sense. Lorenzo. He had left Puglia, the handsome heel in the... If I just read half a sentence more, I would have had my answer. The handsome heel in the boot of Italy, to come to swinging London in the 1960s. Like other men in the desolate port town of Brindisi, he had emigrated to Britain, exchanging life on the Adriatic for a job at the London Brick Company. Lorenzo, in his naivety, had imagined having a wonderful life, making bricks all day, and then and then of an evening he would rub shoulders with the Beatles and walk arm in arm down Carnaby Street with Jean Shrimpton or Marianne Faithfull. The only problem was that despite its name, the London Brick Company wasn't actually in London. It was based 60 miles north of Bedford, which, for all its modest charms, turned out not as swinging as Lorenzo would have liked. But he made a compromise with his dreams and settled there. The work may not have been glamorous, but it paid. Lorenzo married a local Englishwoman called Patricia Brown, who was also getting used to life's disappointments, having exchanged her dream of being an actress for the mundane daily theater of the suburban housewife, and whose culinary skills were forever under the ghostly shadow of her dead Puglian mother-in-law and her legendary spaghetti dishes, which, in Lorenzo's eyes, could never be surpassed. They had a baby girl within a year of getting married, Nora's mother, and they called her Donna. Donna grew up with her parents arguing almost continually, and had consequently believed marriage was something that was not only inevitable, but also inevitably miserable. She became a secretary at a law firm, and then a communications officer for Bedford Council, but then she'd had an experience which was never really discussed, at least not with Nora. She'd experienced some kind of breakdown, the first of several, that caused her to stay at home, and although she recovered, she never went back to work. There was an invisible baton of failure her mother had passed down, and Nora had held it for a long time. Maybe that was why she had given up on so many things. Because she had it written in her DNA that she had to fail. But this is all learned. This is all learned behavior from the stuff that happened to her mother to her. Like, a lot of it is stuff that you kind of internalize. But it doesn't have to be that way, and if you just have someone open your eyes to the fact that that's not your fault, that's not you, I think it could really help. Because there's a lot that I'm seeing here that, like, I've read that seem to be problems with, like, the people around her are experiencing, things like that she's internalized and sort of, like, taken on the burden of herself. But that is how these things work sometimes. These, like, depression and stuff. Nora thought of this as the boat chugged through the Arctic waters and gulls, black-legged kittiwakes. Kittiwakes? Or is it kittiwakes? For one of those pronunciations, I'm going to feel like a fool soon. Let me go ahead and open up a browser window and try to look up the pronunciation. Why? Okay. If you're wondering what my look was about, as I was typing in that word and pronunciation, what came up was how to pronounce. as one of the suggested searches. Okay. Alright. Let's yeah, I don't know. Okay. Kitty wake. Okay. So kitty wake. Alright, kitty wakes. Sounds cute. Yes, I've got it. But black-legged kitty wakes, according to Ingrid. Well, see, the problem is that it's not written kitty space wakes. It's written in the book Kittiwakes, one word. And also pronounced as, like, it sounds like she's talking about the goals there. Which I don't think she is. Actually, yeah, it is. Black-legged kitty wakes. So I don't know that she's talking about the wakes of the boat. But anyway, no matter. Found the pronunciation. We're good. Black-legged kitty wakes, according to Ingrid, flew overhead. On both sides of her family, there had been an unspoken belief that life was meant to fuck you over. Nora's dad, Jeff, had certainly lived a life that seemed to miss its target. He had grown up with only a mother, and as his dad had died of a heart attack when he was 2, cruelly hiding somewhere behind his first memories. Nora's paternal grandmother had been born in rural Ireland, but emigrated to England to become a school cleaner, struggling to bring in enough money for food, let alone anything approaching fun. Jeff had been bullied early on in life, but had grown big and broad enough to easily put those bullies in their place. He worked hard and proved good at football and the shot put, and in particular rugby. He played for the Bedford Blues youth team, becoming their best player, and had a shot at the big time before a collateral ligament injury stopped him in his tracks. He then became a PE teacher and simmered with quiet resentment at the universe. He forever dreamed of travel, but never did much of it beyond a subscription to National Geographic and the occasional holiday to somewhere in the Cyclades. Nora remembered him in Naxos, snapping a picture of the Temple of Apollo at sunset. Maybe that's what all lives were, though. Maybe even the most seemingly perfectly intense or worthwhile lives ultimately felt the same. Acres of disappointment and monotony and hurts and rivalries, but with flashes of wonder and beauty. Maybe that was the only meaning that mattered. To be the world witnessing itself. Maybe it wasn't the lack of achievements that had made her and her brother's parents unhappy. Maybe it was the expectation to achieve in the first place. She had no idea about any of it, really. But on that boat, she realized something. She had loved her parents more than she ever knew, and right then, she forgave them completely. Yeah, I think she's coming to some important realizations there. One night in Longyearbyen. Yeah. It took 2 hours to get back to the tiny port at Longyearbyen. It was Norway's, and the world's, most northern town, with a population of around 2,000 people. Nora knew these basic things from her root life. She had, after all, been fascinated by this part of the world since she was 11, but her knowledge didn't stretch far beyond the magazine articles she had read, and she was still nervous of talking. But the boat trip back had been okay, because her inability to discuss the rock and ice and plant samples they had taken, or to understand phrases such as striated basalt bedrock and post-glacial isotopes. I know how to pronounce that. I've heard it forever at school, basalt, but it's just how it was written there with everything else that made it hard to pronounce. And post-glacial isotopes was put down to the sheer shock of the polar bear incident. And she was in a kind of shock, it was true, but it was not the shock of her colleagues were imagining. The shock hadn't been that she'd thought she'd been about to die. She had been about to die ever since she first encountered the Midnight Library. No, the shock was that she felt like she was about to live. Or at least, that she could imagine wanting to be alive again, and she wanted to do something good with that life. The life of a human, according to the Scottish philosopher David Hume, was of no greater importance to the universe than that of an oyster. But if it was important enough for David Hume to write that thought down, then maybe it was important enough to aim to do something good, to help preserve life in all its forms. That reminds me of another philosopher, Sartre, I think it was, who talked about how that the universe is sort of indifferent to us, and we have the choice to do whatever with our life. We can, nothing is really against us. We can do whatever. We can do great things with the potential that we have, or we don't have to. We can feel crushed by it. We often feel crushed by the inevitability or the feeling that there is this indifference in the universe. But we all have potential. I sound like a public speaker. I feel like I sound like a public speaker. But genuinely, we do. It's just hard to remember that sometimes, and sometimes it's easier to hear it from someone else. So I hope that helps. As Nora understood it, the work this other Nora and her fellow scientists had been doing was something to do with determining the speed at which the ice and glaciers had been melting in the region to gauge the acceleration rate of climate change. There was more to it than that, but that was the core of it, as far as Nora could see. So in this life, she was doing her bit to save the planet, or at least to monitor the steady devastation of the planet in order to alert people to the facts of environmental crisis. That was potentially depressing, but also a good and ultimately fulfilling thing to do, she imagined. There was purpose. There was meaning. They were impressed too, the others, with the polar bear story. Nora was a hero of sorts, not in an Olympic swimming champion way, but in another equally fulfilling kind of fashion. Ingrid had her arm around her. "You are the saucepan warrior, and I think we need to mark your fearlessness and our potentially groundbreaking findings with a meal. A nice meal. And some vodka. What do you say, Peter? A nice meal? And long-eared bien? Do they have them?" As it turned out, they did. Back on dry land, they went to a smart wooden shack of a place called... this book. Gruvelegret. Gruvelegret. Perched off a lonely road in an austere, snow-crisp valley. This book is, killing my credibility at being able to read out loud, okay? She drank Arctic ale and surprised her colleagues by eating the only vegan option on a menu that included reindeer steak and moose burger. Nora must have looked tired because quite a few of her colleagues told her that she did, but maybe it was just that there weren't many places in the conversation that she could enter with confidence. She felt like a learner driver at a busy junction, nervously waiting for a clear and safe patch of road. Hugo was there. He still looked to her like he would rather be in Antibes or St. Tropez. She felt a little uneasy as he stared at her, a little too observed. On the hurried walk back to their land-based accommodation, which reminded Nora of a university hall of residence, but on a smaller scale and more Nordic and wooden and minimal, Hugo jogged to catch her up and walk by her side. "It is interesting," he said. "What is interesting?" "How at breakfast this morning you didn't know who I was?" "Why? You didn't know who I was either." "Of course I did. We were chatting for about 2 hours yesterday." Nora felt like she was inside some kind of trap. "We were?" "I studied you at breakfast before I came over, and I could see you were different today." "That's creepy, Hugo, studying women at breakfast." "And I noticed things." Nora lifted her scarf over her face. "It's too cold. Can we talk about this tomorrow?" "I noticed you improvising. All day you have been noncommittal in everything you say." "Not true. I'm just shook up. You know the bear?" "Non. Ce n'est pas ça. Ce n'est pas... Ka? C with a line thingy under it and A. Ce n'est pas quoi, right? Is that it? It must be like, so in Spanish, you can say que as in like what, but you can also say que with like no accent to say that. So it's like, it's not that. Oh, sa. Why is it so confusing? I don't mean to yell. But why? Okay. No. Ce n'est pas ça. I'm talking about before the bear, and after the bear, and all day. I have no idea what you're... There was a look. I've seen it before in other people. I'd recognize it anywhere. I have no idea what you're talking about. Why do glaciers pulsate? What? This is your area of study. It's why you're here, isn't it? The science isn't entirely settled on the matter. Okay, bien. Name me one of the glaciers around here. Glaciers have names. Name one. Kongsbreen? Northottsbreen? Ring any bells? I don't want this conversation, because you aren't the same person you were yesterday, are you? None of us are, said Nora briskly. Our brains change. It's called neuroplasticity. Please, stop mansplaining glaciers to a glaciologist, Hugo. Hugo seemed to retreat a little, and she felt a bit guilty. There was a minute of silence, just the crunch of their feet in the snow. They were nearly back at the accommodation, the others not too far behind them. But then, he said it. I am like you, Nora. I visit lives that aren't mine. I have been in this one for 5 days. But I have been in many others. I was given an opportunity, a rare opportunity, for this to happen. I have been sliding between lives for a good long while. Ingrid grabbed Nora's arm. I still have some vodka, she announced as they reached the door. She held her key card in her glove and tapped it against the scanner. The door opened. Listen, Hugo mumbled conspiratorially. If you want to know more, meet me in the communal kitchen in 5 minutes. Yeah. And Nora felt her heart race, but this time she had no ladle or saucepan to bang. She didn't particularly like this Hugo character, but was far too intrigued not to hear what he had to say, and she also wanted to know if he could be trusted. Okay, she said. I'll be there. Expectation. Nora had always had a problem accepting herself. From as far back as she could remember, she'd had the sense that she wasn't enough. Her parents, who both had their own insecurities, had encouraged that idea. She imagined now what it would be like to accept herself completely. Every mistake she had ever made, every mark on her body, every dream she hadn't reached or pain she had felt, every lust or longing she had suppressed. She imagined accepting it all, the way she accepted nature, the way she accepted a glacier or a puffin or the breach of a whale. She imagined seeing herself as just another brilliant freak of nature, just another sentient animal, trying their best. And in doing so, she imagined what it was like to be free. Le gasp! Very, very appropriate. The next chapter or section is Life and Death and the Quantum Wave Function. One moment as I just take some more water. Just arranging my water bottles over here. Okay. With Hugo, it wasn't a library. It's a video store, he said, leaning against the cheap-looking cupboard where the coffee was kept. It looks exactly like a video store I used to go to in the outskirts of Lyon. Video Lumière, where I grew up. The Lumière brothers were heroes in Lyon, and there's a lot of things named after them. They invented cinema there. Anyway, that is beside the point. The point is that every life I choose is an old VHS that I play right in the store, and the moment it starts, the moment the movie starts, is the moment I disappear. Nora suppressed a giggle. What's so funny? Hugo wondered, a little hurt. Nothing. Nothing at all. Just seemed mildly amusing. A video store. Oh, and a library, that is entirely sensible? More sensible, yes. I mean, at least you can still use books. Who plays videos these days? Interesting, I had no idea there was such a thing as between life snobbery. You're in education. Sorry, Hugo. Okay, I will ask a sensible question. Is there anyone else there? A person who helps you choose each life? He nodded. Oh yeah, it is my Uncle Philippe. He died years ago, and he never worked in a video store. It's so illogical. Nora told him about Mrs. Elm. A school librarian? Mocked Hugo. That's pretty funny too. Nora ignored him. Do you reckon they're ghosts? Guiding spirits? Guardian angels? What are they? It felt so ludicrous in the heart of a scientific facility to be talking like this. They are, Hugo gestured as if trying to pluck the right term from the air, an interpretation. Interpretation? I have met others like us, Hugo said. You see, I have been in the in-between state for a long time. I have encountered a few other sliders. That's what I call them. Us. We are sliders. We have a root life in which we are lying somewhere unconscious, suspended between life and death, and then we arrive in a place. And it is always something different. A library, a video store, an art gallery, a casino, a restaurant. What does that tell you? Nora shrugged. And thought, listening to the hum of the central heating, that it's all bullshit. That none of this is real. No, because the template is always the same. For instance, there is always someone else there. A guide. Only ever one person. They are always someone who has helped the person at a significant time in their life. The setting is always somewhere with emotional significance. And there's usually talk of root lives or branches. Nora thought about being consoled by Mrs. Elm when her dad died. Staying with her, comforting her. It was probably the most kindness anyone had ever shown her. And there was always an infinite range of choices, Hugo went on. An infinite number of videotapes or books or paintings or meals. Now I am a scientist, and I have lived many scientific lives. In my original root life, I have a degree in biology. I have also, in another life, been a Nobel Prize-winning chemist. I have been a marine biologist, trying to protect the Great Barrier Reef. But my weakness was always physics. At first, I had no idea how to find out what was happening to me, until I met a woman in one life who was going through what we are going through, and in her root life, she was a quantum physicist. Professor Dominique Bisset at Montpellier University. She explained it all to me. The many worlds interpretation of quantum physics. So that means we, a kind-faced, pink-skinned, auburn-bearded man, whose name Nora didn't know, came into the kitchen to rinse a coffee cup, then smiled at them. See you tomorrow, he said in a soft American, maybe Canadian accent, before padding away in his slippers. Yes, said Nora. See you, said Hugo, before returning, in a more hushed tone, to his main thread. The universal wave function is real, Nora. That's what Professor Bisset said. What? Hugo held up a finger, a slightly annoying wait-a-minute kind of finger. Nora resisted a strong urge to grab it and twist it. Erwin Schrödinger, he of the cat. Yes, the cat guy. He said that in quantum physics, every alternative possibility happens simultaneously, all at once, in the same place. Quantum superposition. The cat in the box is both alive and dead. You could open the box and see that it was alive or dead. That's how it goes. But in one sense, even after the box is open, the cat is still both alive and dead. Every universe exists over every other universe. Like a million pictures on tracing paper, all with slight variations within the same frame. The many worlds interpretation of quantum physics suggests that there are an infinite number of divergent parallel universes. Every moment of your life you enter a new universe. With every decision you make, and traditionally it was thought that there could be no communication or transference between those worlds, even though they happen in the same space, even though they happen literally millimeters away from us. Well, but what about us? We're doing that. Exactly. I am here, but I also know that I am not here. I am also lying in a hospital in Paris having an aneurysm. And I am also skydiving in Arizona, and traveling around southern India, and tasting wine in Lyon, and lying on a yacht off the Côte d'Azur. I knew it! Vraiment? Wait. I hope I pronounced that right. That was a lot. I hope I pronounced that right. Raymond? He was, she decided, quite beautiful. You seem more suited to strolling the croissant in Canes than an Arctic adventure. He widened his right hand like a starfish. 5 days! 5 days I have been in this life. That is my record. Maybe this is the life for me. Interesting. You're going to have a very cold life. And who knows? Maybe you are too. I mean, if the bear didn't take you back to your library, maybe nothing will. He started to fill the kettle. Science tells us that the gray zone between life and death is a mysterious place. There is a singular point at which we are not one thing or another, or rather we are both, alive and dead. And in that moment, between the two binaries, sometimes, just sometimes, we turn ourselves into a Schrodinger's cat who may not only be alive or dead, but may be every quantum possibility that exists in line with the universal wave function, including the possibility where we are chatting in a communal kitchen in Longyearbyen at 1 a.m. Nora was taking all this in. She thought of Volts, still and lifeless, under the bed and lying by the side of the road. But sometimes the cat is just dead and dead. But sometimes the cat is just dead and dead. Sorry? Nothing. It's just... my cat died. And I tried another life, and even in that one, he was still dead. That's sad. I had a similar situation with a Labrador. But the point is, there are others like us. I have lived so many lives. I have come across a few of them. Sometimes just to say your own truth out loud is enough to find others like you. It's crazy to think that there are other people who could be... what did you call us? Sliders. Yep. That. Well, it's possible, of course, but I think we're rare. One thing I've noticed is that the other people I've met, the dozen or so, have all been around our age, all 30s or 40s or 50s. One was 29, en fait. All had a deep desire to have done things differently. They had regrets. Some contemplated that they may be better off dead, but also had a desire to live as another version of themselves. Schrodinger's life, both dead and alive in your own mind. Exactement. I can't tell if I pronounce... This French is like so... Why is it all French? I need to look at the background of the writer, because I feel like they have some sort of, like, history with French or something. I feel like this has come up a lot, because there's been a lot of stuff that I have not been able to pronounce. Exactement. Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and I hope I kind of got it that time. It's just hard to say in the moment when you're reading. Okay. Exactement. And whatever those regrets did to our brain, whatever, how would you say, neurochemical event happened that confused yearning for death and life was somehow just enough to send us into this state of total in-between. The kettle was getting noisier, the water starting to bubble like Nora's thoughts. Why is it always just one person that we see? And the place, like the library, whatever. Hugo shrugged. If I was religious, I'd say it was God. And as God is probably someone we can't see or comprehend, then he, or she, or whichever pronoun God is, becomes an image of someone good we have known in our lives. And if I wasn't religious, which I'm not, I would think that the human brain can't handle the complexity of an open quantum wave function, and so it organizes or translates this complexity into something it understands. A librarian in a library, a friendly uncle in a video store, etc. Nora had read about multiverses and knew a bit about Gestalt psychology, about how human brains take complex information about the world and simplify it so that when a human looks at a tree, it translates the intricately complex mass of leaves and branches into this thing called tree. To be a human was to continually dumb the world down into an understandable story that keeps things simple. She knew that everything humans see is a simplification. A human sees the world in 3 dimensions. That is simplification. Humans are fundamentally limited, generalizing creatures living on autopilot who straighten out curved streets in their minds, which explains why they get lost all the time. It's like how humans never see the sound of the second hand of a clock mid-tick, said Nora. What? She saw that Hugo's watch was of the analog variety. Try it. You just can't. Minds can't see what they can't handle. Hugo nodded as he observed his own watch. See the second hand of a clock mid-tick. It's so true. You only hear it you only see it as like dook, dook, dook. Okay. Hugo nodded as he observed his own watch. So, Nora said, whatever exists between universes is most likely not a library, but that is the easiest way for me to understand it. That would be my hypothesis. I see a simplified version of the truth. The librarian is just a kind of mental metaphor. The whole thing is. Isn't it fascinating? Said Hugo. Nora sighed. In the last life I spoke to my dead dad. Hugo opened a jar of coffee and scooped out granules into 2 mugs. And I didn't drink coffee. I drank peppermint tea. Oh, that sounds terrible. It was bearable. Another thing that is strange, Hugo said. At any point in this conversation, you or I could disappear. Have you seen that happen? Nora took the mug Hugo handed her. Yeah, a few times. It's freaky. But no one else would notice. They become a bit vague with their memory for the last day, but you would be surprised. If you went back to the library right now and I was still standing here talking to you in the kitchen, you would say something like, my mind's just gone blank. What were we talking about? And then I'd realized what had happened, and I'd say we were talking about glaciers, and you'd bombarded me with facts about them. And your brain would fill in the gaps and make up a narrative about what just happened. Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like the same sort of thing happens in, there's a game called BioShock Infinite, where... Spoiler alert, I'm not going to go too into it for anyone who hasn't played BioShock Infinite, but it does involve one character sort of coming from one reality into another reality and sort of having to just, like, piece together things from what they have around them, like, from facts that they are told. And also, if I think about it, it's like Nageki and what he did in Hot Tub Boyfriend. I'm going to relate this to a game about birds. Yes, I am. But when he woke up in the library and started piecing together what happened to him based on what he was seeing now. Yeah, but what about the polar bear? What about the meal tonight? This other one. Would you remember what I ate? Not necessarily, but I have seen it happen. It's amazing what the brain can fill in, and what it is fine with forgetting. So, what was I like? Yesterday, I mean. He locked eyes. They were pretty eyes. Nora momentarily felt pulled into his orbit like a satellite to Earth. Exquisite, charming, intelligent, beautiful. Much like now. She laughed it off. Stop being so French. Awkward pause. How many lives have you had? She said eventually. How many have you experienced? Too many. Nearing 300. 300? I have been so many things, on every continent on Earth, and yet I have never found the life for me. I am resigned to being this way forever. There will never be a life that I truly want to live forever. I get too curious. I get too much of a yearning to live another way. And you don't need to make that face. I'm not sad. It's not sad. I am happily in limbo. But what if one day there is no video store? Nora thought about Mrs. Elm panicking at the computer and the flickering lights in the library. What if one day you disappear for good, before you have found a life to settle in? He shrugged. Then I will die. And it means I would have died anyway, in the life I lived before. I kind of like being a slider. I like imperfection. I like keeping death as an option. I like never having to settle. I think my situation is different. I think my death is more imminent. If I don't find a life to live pretty soon, I think I'll be gone for good. She explained the problem she'd had last time with transferring back. Oh. Yeah, well, that might be bad. But it might not be. You do realize that there are infinite possibilities here? I mean, the multiverse isn't just about some universes. It's not about a handful of universes. It's not even about a lot of universes. It's not about 1 million or 1 billion or 1 trillion universes. It's about an infinite number of universes, even with you in them. You could be you in any version of the world, however unlikely that world would be. You are only limited by your own imagination. You can be very creative with the regrets you want to undo. I once undid a regret about not doing something I'd contemplated as a teenager, doing aerospace engineering and becoming an astronaut. And so, in one life, I became an astronaut. I haven't been to space, but I became someone who had been there for a little while. The thing you have to remember is that this is an opportunity, and it is rare, and we can undo any mistake we made, live any life we want, any life. Dream big. You can be anything you want to be, because in one life, you are. She sipped her coffee. I understand. But you will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life, he said wisely. You're quoting Camus. You got me. I hate Camus. Actually, Camus might not be terrible, but the things that I have read from Camus were annoying. Just not a very exciting writer, I guess. To be fair, I did read it in high school, and I think what someone is looking for in terms of reading, probably in, when they were, like, 15, 16, probably not Camus. I was just gonna, like, I appreciate that our teacher tried, especially because looking back, the teacher I had assigned the book, if I'm being honest, I would not peg as one who would decide to assign Camus. I'll just say that, but she did, and yeah, I mean, yeah. Anyway, tangent over. He was staring at her. Nora no longer minded his intensity, but was becoming a little concerned about her own. I was a philosophy student, she said, as blandly as she could manage, avoiding his eyes. He was close to her now. There was something equally annoying and attractive about Hugo. He exuded an arrogant amorality that made his face something to either slap or kiss, depending on the circumstances. In one life, we have known each other for years and are married, he said. In most lives, I don't know you at all, she countered, now staring straight at him. That's so sad. I don't think so. Really? Really, she smiled. We're special, Nora. We're chosen. No one understands us. No one understands anyone. We're not chosen. The only reason I am still in this life is because of you. She lunged forward and kissed him. This is where I talked about possibly ending for today. If you would like me to keep going, I can. But we are also completely okay with ending here and discussing. It is up to you guys. I can't stop there? Why can't I? I'll keep going, but also, a thing that I want to mention is we just passed half the book. Exciting. Exciting, we just passed half the book. Okay, so let us continue on, and that is going to also open up conversation that I wanted to mention. Well, I did mention last time, I think, this idea of suggest books to read in the future, because we are halfway done now, so I will start considering new novels. If you don't want to, that's okay too. I do have some ideas, but yeah, totally, like, let me know if there's anything that you wanted to read that you didn't get a chance to read, or anything like that. We can go ahead and work on that. And, of course, that can be posted on YouTube as well, because it's probably better, in fact, to be posted on YouTube, unless you want to just, like, bring it up randomly in another stream on the chat, because you want it to actually be solid in there. No! No! I don't want to do Camus. I veto that. Read Camus on your own time. I should have seen that coming. No, well, I don't want scary. I prefer not spooky. Don't make it sound like I'm hugely limiting, though. He's a mystery novel writer, right? Oh. I'm not as opposed to mystery. I like mystery. I like solving puzzles. We'll discuss this some other time when the chat isn't being so mean. So, okay. The chapter is, or the section is called, If Something is Happening to Me, I Want to Be There. It was a very pleasant sensation, both the kiss and the knowledge she could be this forward. Being aware that everything that could possibly happen happened to her somewhere in some life kind of absolved her a little from decisions. That was just the reality of the universal wave function. Whatever was happening could, she reasoned, be put down to quantum physics. I don't share a room, he said. She stared at him fearlessly now, as if facing down a polar bear had given her a certain capacity for dominance she'd never been aware of. Well, Hugo, maybe you could break the habit. But the sex turned out to be a disappointment. A Camus quote came to her, right in the middle of it. You're thinking of Camus? Right now? I feel like he'd be very... I don't know. I feel like Camus would be insulted about that. Like, I feel like even Camus would be insulted. Anyway. I may have not been sure about what really did interest me, but I was absolutely sure about what didn't. It probably wasn't the best sign of how their nocturnal encounter was going, that she was thinking of existential philosophy, or that this quote in particular was the one that appeared in her mind. But hadn't Camus also said, if something is going to happen to me, I want to be there? Hugo, she concluded, was a strange person. For a man who had been so intimate and deep in his conversation, he was very detached from the moment. Maybe if you lived as many lives as he had, the only person you really had any kind of intimate relationship with was yourself. She felt like she might not have been there at all. I guess everything would kind of feel like intangible, sort of, if you were the only constant for yourself. My hair is doing a weird, silly thing, but I'm gonna try to ignore it. And, oh, she felt like she might not have been there at all. And in a few moments, she wasn't. That, like, sucks. That's the thing that took her out. Are you sure you wanted me to read on? Are you happy with where we are? Okay, I will read one more section, and we'll stop here for today to discuss God and Other Librarians. Who are you? You know me. You know my name. I am Mrs. Elm. Louise Isabel Elm. Are you God? She smiled. I am who I am. And who is that? The librarian. But you aren't a real person. You're just a mechanism. Aren't we all? Not like that. You are the product of some strange interaction between my mind and the multiverse, some simplification of the quantum wave function or whatever it is. Mrs. Elm looked perturbed by the suggestion. What is the matter? Nora thought of the polar bear as she stared down at the yellow brownstone floor. I nearly died. And remember, if you die in a life, there is no way back here. That's not fair. The library has strict rules. Books are precious. You have to treat them carefully. But there are other lives, other variants of me. Not me. Yes, but while you are experiencing them, it is you who has to pay the consequences. Well, I think that stinks, to be perfectly honest. The librarian's smile curled at its edges like a fallen leaf. Well, this is interesting. What is interesting? The fact that you have so thoroughly changed your attitude towards dying. What? You wanted to die, and now you don't. It dawned on Nora that Mrs. Elm might be close to having a point, although not quite the whole point. Well, I still think my actual life isn't worth living. In fact, this experience has just managed to confirm that. She shook her head. I don't think you think that. I do think that. That's why I said it. No. The Book of Regrets is getting lighter. There's a lot of white space in there now. It seems that you have spent all your life saying things that you aren't really thinking. This is one of your barriers. Barriers? Yes. You have a lot of them. They stop you from seeing the truth. About what? About yourself. And you really need to start trying to see the truth. Because this matters. I thought there was an infinite number of lives to choose from. You need to pick the life you'd be most happy inside, or soon there won't be a choice at all. I met someone who's been doing this for a long time, and he still hasn't found a life that he is satisfied with. Well, Hugo's is a privilege you might not have. Hugo? How do you... But then she remembered Mrs. Elm knew a lot more than she should. You need to choose carefully, continued the librarian. One day the library may not be here, and you'll be gone forever. How many lives do I have? This isn't a magic lamp, and I am no genie. There is no set number. It could be 1. It could be 100. But you only have an infinite number of lives to choose from, so long as the time in the Midnight Library stays, well, at midnight. Because while it stays at midnight, your life, your root life, is somewhere between life and death. If time moves here, that means something very... She searched for a delicate word. Decisive has happened. Something that razes the Midnight Library to the ground and takes us with it. And so I would err on the side of caution. I would try to think very keenly about where you want to be. You have clearly made some progress, I can tell. You seem to realize that life could be worth living if only you found the right one to exist inside. But you don't want that gate to close before you get a chance to go through it. They both were silent for a very long time as Nora observed all the books around her. All the possibilities. Calmly and slowly she walked along the aisle, wondering what lay beyond the covers of each book, and wishing the green spines would offer some kind of clue. Now, which book do you fancy? Came Mrs. Elm's words behind her. Nora remembered Hugo's words in the kitchen. Dream big. The librarian had a penetrating gaze. Who is Nora Seed, and what does she want? When Nora thought of her closest access to happiness, it was music. Yes, she still played the piano and keyboard sometimes, which she had given up creating. She'd given up singing. She thought of those happy early pub gigs playing Beautiful Sky. She thought of her brother larking about on stage with her and Ravi and Ella. So now she knew precisely which book to ask for. And that's where we will stop this time. The next section is entitled Fame. I will live forever. And I don't know any of the other lyrics from that song, so I'm not going to sing it. But anyway, let's talk about it. What do you guys want to discuss from this section? Anything come to mind that I didn't bring up? Yes. I mean, again, the first thing was thinking about Camus. My hair is being so silly. Anyway, can we talk about something else? There's like a little thingy that's doing a thing. It's just bothering me. But anyway, yes, let's... Thermodynamic NPR project? I have no idea. Well, thank you for joining our conversation. Can you enlighten me on this? And yes, deep down, life is worth living. I really enjoyed that part of the section that we read. Yes, can you just explain your question, or you demand an answer? I don't know about, the subject of the question, so then my solution to it is just don't learn about it. That's it. We ignore that it exists. Now, I'd really like to know. I'm actually curious about what that is. Thermodynamics, NPR. Please, tell me something. Are you genuinely... Is this genuinely something that, is on your mind? I wonder if it has any bearing to what we just read in terms of, glaciology and climate change. In terms of, what we discovered in Nora's, life in Svalbard. I'm curious. No! You can't leave like this. I mean, I would definitely Google it after the fact, but I'd like to be able to conversate about it now. But yeah, I also think that she's gonna end up, living her real life. I really hope that she actually ends up connecting with Ash, who, broke the news about Volts initially. Because I think we're having, like, these tiny little hints that, there might be more there in terms of what she could have in terms of relationship, friendship, with him. Oh. Well, thank you for trying to stump me. I'm sure someone can answer it. I'm sure there's someone who can answer it. Someone out there. Maybe not in this chat at this very second, but someone who can answer it. And in fact, I'm going to look it up, and we can talk about it next time. And then I will have an answer for you. So just you wait. Okay? I will take it along with my other homework that I have. Is it not a thing? If it is not a thing, then I will make it a thing. I will decide what this thing is, and I will make a solution for it. I will think of something. I take this challenge and see it head on. Now, will it be a good solution? I don't know. Could be absolutely shit. Could be. But I'll give it a shot. But yeah, I do think that, that she and Ash have more to talk about. I'm wondering if maybe he's, I don't know if he's shown an interest in her, or if he's just tried to be friendly. And, like, sometimes you miss these things when you're so concerned with, like, everything that's sort of going wrong, and your mind is just, you know, elsewhere. You miss these things that might be right in front of you. It's that whole forest for the trees thing. Sort of forest for the trees. Huh? Are we still talking about the thermodynamic thing? Let's hold off on the thermodynamic thing. We'll have it. I promise we'll have it. No, it's okay. Thank you for joining. I appreciate any conversation, so it was fun. No bother. We're just talking about a specific book that we're reading right now, and like where we think it's going to go, and just the philosophical conversations that it's brought up so far. But you are totally fine. This was a fun divergence. And again, totally gonna look it up and come back with an answer next time, so... Yeah, no, me too. I wonder, because, like, you know, the whole rock star life is something that... I feel like it sounds appealing to mostly, like, teenagers. But for me, thinking about that kind of stuff always seems like, and even like I want to do acting, that kind of life can be really tumultuous, like, and scary, because you always have like a heightened sense of wanting to please people, wanting to make other people happy. Like, it's just, it comes with it. It comes with the territory. And that can be really hard on your self-worth and your self-esteem. Yeah. That too. No privacy. I feel like I have to sneeze, but I don't think I'm gonna end up sneezing. So it'll be very interesting to see where this goes. Yeah, I know. It's like a sort of stinging and then just dissipating. Kind of. Do we have anything else to discuss from the book, or... I think we might be finishing up then, if not. Yeah, I think that we might be finishing up for this evening then. Yeah. I feel like, I mean, yes, absolutely. I feel like it's also about finding the good and the enjoyable in what you are doing, whether it's the thing you've always dreamed about or not. Find what makes here and now good and fun and nice. Yeah. That too. Turning a passion into a career, and that sometimes that can, like, kill the passion. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Nora. In the meantime, though, we are going to end here. Oh. Definitely. I feel like that, too. This is a weird, like, comparison, but, like, I have where if I take a picture of myself, I'm usually very critical of the picture. I don't like how I look, I don't like this and that. If I look at that same picture, like, a month from then, or, like, something like that, then you realize that actually you looked fine. Or, like, oh my god, I really liked how I did my makeup then, or something like that. So, this sounds like a very, like, superficial example to talk about in this case. But seriously though, you have that and then you only really appreciate it after the fact. It's really hard to feel things and see things and notice things, especially the positive. Maybe just for me. Maybe it's depression. Who knows? But it's really hard to see that stuff in the moment, I think. I think a big part of it is knowing that our vision is always kind of skewed. Our perception is always kind of skewed. I think it's always good to give yourself little reality checks like that. Anyway, though. Again, thank you guys for joining, and I hope you guys enjoyed the section that we read. We'll be continuing on from the section entitled Fame next time. Thank you for coming in and asking your questions and doing conversation with me. It's been a great time. And next week, come Saturday, we'll be streaming 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, of course, to do Hot of a Boyfriend Holiday Star, because we've actually just ended the first Hot of a Boyfriend game, so we will be here for that. And then, of course, Sunday, again, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just like today, we will be doing another section of Quoth the Author. So you can go ahead, in the meantime, go ahead and check us out on YouTube, where same username, the link is actually in my Twitch profile. You can go ahead and check me out from there. Go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe if you want any of your comments to be immortalized and stay there forever. If you have any questions after the fact that you want answered, that would be the place to do it. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, guys. This has been Sky. Bye-bye.